Hello. This is the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, Book 8, and then some thoughts. Part 1. Here's a thought that should flatten any false pride. It is no longer possible to live your entire life, not even your adult life, as a philosopher. How far short of philosophy you fall is plain to others, as it is to yourself. Your life is flawed, your reputation tainted, and it is no longer possible to win the glory of being a philosopher. Even your calling in life militates against it. Having seen these truths with your own eyes, stop worrying about what others may think, and be content to live the rest of your life, as long or short as it may be, according to the requirements of your own nature. Know those requirements well, and let nothing pry you from them. You have searched everywhere, and in all your wanderings you have not found happiness, not in clever arguments, nor in wealth, fame, pleasure, or anything else. Where is happiness, then? In doing what a man's nature requires. And how will you do this? By basing your actions and desires on sound principles. What principles? Principles that distinguish right from wrong and demonstrate that nothing is good for a man unless it helps him to be just, responsible, courageous, and free, while nothing is bad that fails to produce the opposite result. Number 2. Before you act, ask yourself, what are the likely consequences of this act? Will I later have cause to regret it? A little while, and I will be dead, and all will be gone and forgotten. What more can I ask if I am to act as a rational being in kinship with my fellow man and subject to the same law as God? 3. Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Pompey the Great, what are they compared to Diogenes, Heraclitus, and Socrates? The latter saw into the nature of things, their causes and their constituent parts, and what is more, the reason that guided them was their own. Whereas in the case of the former, how great the things for which they were responsible and how petty the things to which they were enslaved. Part 4. You may explode in rage, but men will still go on doing what they have always done. Part 5. Above all, there is no point in worrying. All things obey the laws of nature, and before long you too will be like Hadrian and Augustus, nobody and nowhere. Then concentrate on the work at hand, seeing it for what it is, and bearing in mind your duty to be a good man. Go where your nature takes you without so much as turning in your tracks. Speak what seems to you most just, but don't be rude, arrogant, or pretentious about it. Part 6. This is nature's job, to move things from one place to another, to transform them, to take what is here and carry it over there. All is change, yet there's nothing unexpected to fear. All is familiar habit, and every transfer equitable. Part 7. Every nature finds fulfillment in pursuing the right path. For a nature like yours, endowed with reason, this means refusing to approve ideas that are false or foggy, directing your energies only to the common good, limiting your likes and dislikes to those things that lie within your grasp, and rejoicing in everything the universal nature has assigned you. For your reasonable nature is a part of the universal nature, just as a leaf's nature is part of the plant's, except that a leaf's nature is part of a nature devoid of feeling, deprived of reason, and subject to being hindered, while human nature is part of the universal nature that is unhindered, mindful, and just, demonstrated by the manner in which it assigns to all men, according to their worth, a fair share of time, substance, cause, activity, and conditions. But don't go looking for equality in individual cases. Rather, make your comparisons by examining large samples and total outcomes. Part 8. My student days are over. Nevertheless, you can still learn to check your arrogance. Learn to rise above pleasure and pain, learn to ignore flattery, and learn not only to keep from being upset with the gauche and ungrateful, but to give them a helping hand. Part 9. No one should ever hear you complaining about palace life. No one, not even your own ears. 10. Regret is what we feel when we blame ourselves for failing to take advantage of a useful opportunity. Now, whatever is good is necessarily useful and of pressing concern to every good man, but no such man feels any regret for failing to indulge in a pleasure. Pleasure, therefore, is neither useful nor good. 11. Ask this of a thing. What is it in and of itself? What is its individual makeup, its essence, form, and matter, its purpose in the world, its duration? 12. When you have trouble staying awake, remember that working with and on behalf of others is in keeping with the laws of human nature and of your own constitution, whereas sleep is something you share with the brute beasts. Now, whatever is in keeping with a creature's own peculiar nature is more proper and more fitting, and also more congenial. 13. Test every thought and sense perception, if possible, by the methods of science, the laws of morality, and the rules of logic. 14. Whenever you meet someone, ask yourself straight away, what are the things this person deems good and evil? For if he holds certain beliefs about pleasure and pain and the causes of each, about fame and obscurity, or about death and life, then I won't think it surprising or weird if he behaves in a certain way. Indeed, I'll regard it as inevitable. 15. Are you surprised to find a fig tree bearing figs? Then why wonder at the world when it bears its own peculiar crop of events? What an absurd contradiction! What kind of doctor or sea captain is surprised to find his patient with a fever or a contrary wind blowing? 16. Remember that you don't lose any freedom by changing your mind and accepting the correction of someone who points out your error. After all, it's your initiative, your judgment, indeed your intelligence, that makes change and acceptance possible. 17. If the decision rests with you, why do it? If with another, who's really to blame? The gods, the atoms? To blame either is pointless. Blame no one. If you can, correct the offender. If you can't, correct his offense. And if not even that's possible, what's the point in looking for someone to blame? Nothing should be done pointlessly. 18. What dies doesn't fall out of the universe. Here it stays, and here too it changes and dissolves into its primal elements, the same elements that make up the universe and you. These elements also change and murmur not. 19. Everything, horse, vine, everything exists for a purpose. Is it any wonder? Even Helios, the sun god, will say, I have a job to do, and the rest of the gods will say the same. So what will you say? I'm here to have a good time? The very thought is beneath contempt. 20. Nature is as careful in planning the end of a thing as its beginning and middle. Consider the act of throwing a ball in the air. How does it benefit the ball to rise, or harm it to fall, or to come to rest on the ground? How is a bubble better for having been blown, or worse for having burst? Likewise for a lamp. 21. Strip the body naked and see it for what it is, for what it becomes with age, disease, and debauchery. Short are the lives of those who praise, and of those who are praised, of those who remember, and of those who are remembered. And even these lives are lived in but one small corner of this continent, where men are not at peace with one another or with themselves, and the whole earth is the merest speck in space. 22. Attend to the matter at hand, whether it be an object, an action, a moral principle, or the meaning of what is being said. You get what you deserve because you would rather become good tomorrow than do good today. 23. Am I doing something? I do it for the good of mankind. Is something done to me? I accept it, referring it to the gods and to the source from which all things flow interdependently. 24. Think of your bath. Oil, sweat, grime, filthy water, all utterly disgusting. Such is every part of life and every material thing you measure or treasure. 25. Lucilla buried Verus, Lucilla perished. Secunda and Maximus, Epinetchatus and Diotimus, Faustina and Antonius, always the same story. Keller buries Hadrian, then it's Keller's turn. All those keen minds and noble natures of the past, some far-sighted, others puffed with their own importance, where are they now? Such brilliant wits as Charax, for instance, or Demetrius the Platonist, and Eudaimon and others like them, all lasted for a day and are long dead. Some no sooner dead than forgotten, others turned into legend, and the legends already fading into oblivion. These should serve to remind you that your atoms will soon be scattered, or your breath simply snuffed out, or your component parts transmuted and placed into service somewhere else. 26. Happy is the man who does the work of a man. What is a man's work? To love his neighbor, to distrust the evidence of his senses, to distinguish false ideas from true, and to contemplate the works of nature. 27. You have 3 relationships. The first is with your physical abode, the body. The second is with the divine source of everything. And the third is with those who share this life with you. 28. Pain is either bad for the body, and if so, let the body say so, or for the soul. But the mind can refuse to regard pain as bad, and thereby ensure the soul's unclouded calm and perfect equanimity. Every judgment of this sort, every impulse to act, every desire and aversion comes from within. Nothing bad can gain entrance without the mind's consent. 29. Erase false and fearful fancies by repeating to yourself, no evil, no desire, no disturbance of any sort can gain entrance to my soul except I let them. By seeing things for what they are, I can use them for what they're worth. Remember that nature has planted this power in you. 30. Whether speaking to the Senate or to the humblest person, use language that is respectful but not affected. Let your speech be plain and honest. 31. Look at the court of Augustus. His wife, daughter, children, ancestors, sister, Agrippina, relatives, members of his household, friends, Arius, Macanus, his doctors and priests, the entire court now dead. Then consider the deaths of others, not just the deaths of single individuals, but the extinction of whole lines like the Pompeys. Think of the phrase inscribed on so many tombs, last of his line. Imagine all the efforts his ancestors made to leave an heir, but in the end, someone had to be last, and another line vanished from the earth. 32. Build your life one action at a time, and be happy if each act you perform contributes to a fulfilling and complete life. No one can prevent you from doing this. But what if some outside circumstance stands in my way? Not even that can stop you from acting justly, wisely, and reasonably, but it may block me from doing something I want to do. Yes, but by welcoming the obstacle, and by calmly adapting your action to it, you will be able to do something else in harmony with your goals and with the sort of life you are seeking to build. 33. modest in victory, graceful in defeat. (34) Have you ever seen a hand or foot cut off, or a head severed and lying apart from the rest of the body? This is exactly what a man does to himself as far as he is able, when he refuses to accept what happens and distances himself from others or behaves churlishly. You are torn from the unity of nature into which you were born apart and from which you have now cut yourself off. But here's an astounding thought. You are still capable of rejoining that unity. To no other part of his creation has God granted the power to rejoin the whole once it has been cut off or severed. Notice with what generosity God has dignified man. Not only has God given him the power to remain united with the whole, but if man cuts himself off from the whole, he has provided the means for him to rejoin the whole and play his part again. 35. Nature equips rational beings with the same powers as herself. Just as nature works and whatever opposes or resists her, giving it a place in the necessary order and making it part of herself, so too can a rational being convert every hindrance into material for himself and use it for his own ends. 36. Don't panic before the picture of your entire life. Don't dwell on all the troubles you've faced or have yet to face, but instead ask yourself as each trouble comes, what is so unbearable or unmanageable in this? Your reply will embarrass you. Then remind yourself that it's not the future or the past that bears down on you, but only the present, always the present, which becomes an even smaller thing when isolated in this way, and when the mind cannot bear up under so slender an object is chastened. 37. Did Panthea or Pergamus still sit in mourning by the tomb of Verus? Is Trebius or Diotimus weeping at Hadrian's grave? Ridiculous. And if they were, would the dead feel their presence? And if they did, would they be pleased? And if pleased, would their pleasure make the mourners immortal? Are the mourners not fated like those they mourned to become old women and old men and then to die? And what would be left for the dead to do after the mourners died? This is all stench and gore in a sack. 38. If you have a sharp eye, says the proverb, then look sharp, seeing the right course and judging wisely. 39. In the makeup of a rational being, I can see no virtue incompatible with justice, but I do find a virtue at odds with pleasure, self-control. 40. If you give up your opinion about what appears to cause you pain, then you cannot be harmed. Who is the you that does this? Your reason. But reason and I are not the same, so be it. Then let your reason not be harmed, and if any other part of you appears to feel pain, let it form its own opinion and keep that to itself. 41. Any hindrance to the senses is a bad thing for our animal nature, as is any obstacle to desire. There are also obstructions harmful to the nature of plants. Similarly, any impediment to clear thinking is bad for an intelligent nature. Now apply all this to yourself. Are you affected by pain or pleasure? Let the senses handle that. Are you thwarted in the achievement of a goal or desire? If you desired without restraint or reservation, you violated your intelligent nature. Desire instead within the limits imposed by reason, and all obstacles and injuries will disappear. Nothing can rule or impede the mind within its own kingdom, neither fire, nor sword, nor a tyrant, or slander, nothing whatsoever. The perfect sphere, once spun and true, remains spherical. 42. Since I've never intentionally harmed another, what right have I to injure myself? 43. Some delight in this, others in that. My delight is in clear thinking and a clean conscience, in not running away from any man or from anything that happens to men, but in looking on all with compassion and using everything according to its worth. 44. Give yourself the present. Those who chase after future fame fail to realize that the men whose praise they crave tomorrow will be no different from the men whose opinions they despise today, and all these men will die. What do you care whether tomorrow's men know the sound of your name or say nice things about you? 45. Take and toss me wherever you want. My soul will remain invincible and at peace, content to be and to act in harmony with its own rules. Is a mere change of scene capable of disturbing or debasing my soul, causing it to crave or cower, sink or quake? What could possibly cause this? 46. Nothing can happen to a man that isn't natural to men. Likewise, what happens to cattle, vines, and stones is natural to each. What is there to complain about when all these things endure only what is usual and natural? Nature allows nothing that you can't handle. 47. If you're troubled by something outside yourself, it isn't the thing itself that bothers you, but your opinion of it, and this opinion you have the power to revoke immediately. If what troubles you arises from some flaw in your character or disposition, what prevents you from correcting the flaw? If it's your failure to do some good or necessary work that frustrates you, why not put your energy into doing it rather than fretting about it? But something stronger than I prevents me, then don't worry. It isn't your responsibility to do what you lack the power to do. But if it isn't done, life isn't worth living. Then quit this life in peace, as one who dies full of good works and forgiveness for those who opposed him. (48) You will recall how impregnable your mind is when it withdraws into itself and steadfastly refuses to do what it doesn't want to do, even when its refusal is unreasonable. Imagine, then, what it's like when it arrives at a decision calmly and reasonably. Free from passions, the mind is a veritable fortress. A man cannot find a more secure place to take refuge and remain unassailable forever. Ignorant is he who fails to see this, and truly ill-fated is he who sees but fails to take refuge. 49. Don't make more of things than what your senses initially tell you. You are told, for example, that someone has been gossiping about you. Okay, but you aren't told this chatter hurt you. Or you may see your child is sick. Yes, but you don't see he's in danger. Always stick to your first impressions and don't begin adding inferences of your own and you'll be safe. Or rather add this observation only. Everything that happens is part of the natural and familiar order of things. 50. The cucumber is bitter. Throw it away. There's a briar in my path. Walk around it. That's enough. Don't feel compelled to add, why are these things allowed to happen? The naturalist will only have a good laugh at your expense, as would the carpenter or shoemaker, if you complained about sawdust or leather trimmings in their workshops. Still, these craftsmen have a place to throw their debris, whereas nature has no such place. Yet the wonder of her craft is that she is able, without going outside herself, to transform what appears worn out, old, and useless into entirely new creations. She uses no materials outside herself and has no need of a scrap heap. She labors contentedly in her own space, with her own materials, at her own art. 51. Don't be sluggish in action, discursive in conversation, or scattered in thought. Don't let your soul dry up with self-concern or gush with emotion. Give your life room to breathe. So what if they kill you, hack you to pieces, hunt you down with curses? How can this keep your mind from being pure, sound, temperate, and just? If a man were to stop beside a limpid spring of sweet water and start hurling insults at it, would it suddenly cease to flow? Even if he threw mud and excrement into the stream, it would soon dissolve and wash away and leave no taint or stain. How then can you possess an ever-flowing spring? By using the freedom you already possess to imbue your character with compassion, simplicity, and modesty. 52. The man who does not understand the nature of the universe cannot know his place in it. Nor can he know who he is or what the universe is without understanding the purpose of the universe. Failing to understand these two things, he cannot begin to say why he was born. What are we, then, to say about someone who seeks the applause of those who neither know where nor who they are? 53. Do you covet the praises of someone who 3 times every hour curses himself? Do you hope to please the person who isn't pleased with himself? Is he pleased with himself, who regrets nearly everything he does? 54. You breathe the air that surrounds you. Why not think with the intelligence that surrounds everything? No less than the air we breathe, the power to think pervades everything and flows to those who draw upon it. 55. Doing evil doesn't harm the universe, nor does one person's wrongdoing hurt another. It only hurts the person who is doing the wrong, and he can stop doing it whenever he wishes. 56. My neighbor's power to choose has no more to do with my freedom of choice than has his breath and flesh. It matters not how much we're made for one another. The governing self in each of us is still sovereign. Otherwise, my nature's bad choices might harm me. God does not want my happiness held hostage by someone else. 57. The sun's light appears to be poured down and all around, but it is never poured out. This pouring forth is a radiation. Because they are radiated, we call sunbeams rays. You can examine the nature of a ray by observing what happens when sunlight enters a darkened room through a narrow opening. It proceeds in a direct line until it is held up by an object that cuts it off from the air on the other side. There it rests without slipping off or falling away. Just so should the pouring forth and spreading out of thought be, not diffuse but radiant. It doesn't crash violently or impetuously into the obstacles it encounters, or fall away from them, but it rests and sheds light on whatever it meets. What fails to reflect the light deprives itself of light. 58. He who fears death fears either the loss of sensation or some new sensation. But if he feels no sensation, how will he feel hurt? And if he experiences a new sensation, it will be as a new creature, yet still alive. 59. Men exist for the sake of one another. Teach them to be better or put up with them. 60. An arrow flies one way, a thought another. Yet a thought, when it is aimed with care and circumspection, speeds to its target no less directly. 61. Enter into your neighbor's governing thoughts, and let your neighbor enter into yours. Okay. So, some thoughts. First of all, this bit here in number 1 says, you have searched everywhere, and in all your wanderings you have not found happiness. Not in clever arguments, not in wealth, fame, pleasure, or anything else. Now, Marcus Aurelius here is speaking very much from experience. Not in clever arguments. I mean, he's obviously very well educated. He is able, at any time he wishes, to speak with the greatest minds in his entire civilization. He is well-read, well-traveled, all of these things, but merely speaking with others doesn't make him happy. In wealth, he is literally the wealthiest person in the entire Western Hemisphere at this point, for sure. He can buy anything he wishes. He can have buildings built. He could have a town built for himself. He could have 1,000 workers doing whatever he wants in the snap of his fingers. He could have physicians, beauty, gold, whatever he wants, and that doesn't make him happy. He has that already, and he's not happy. Fame, he's the emperor. Doesn't make him happy. Pleasure, again, he can do anything he wants. He can eat and drink and sleep and adventure and party and read and learn and drink and eat again and again and again and have wonderful conversations with incredibly pretty people, and it doesn't make him happy, or anything else. So I think this is something that really tends to mark out Marcus's life, as far as I can read it. He's just not happy. Right? He focuses on happiness being. Right? He says, "Where is happiness then? In doing what a man's nature requires. And how will you do this? By basing your actions and desires on sound principles. What principles? Principles that distinguish right from wrong, and help them to be just, responsible, courageous, and free." So, for him, happiness is these moral principles, these natural, reasonable principles that allow him to distinguish right from wrong, good from bad. And he is following these principles because they help him to be just, responsible, courageous, free, right? For justice, because he is responsible for these things. He isn't giving up and thinking, oh, someone else can do this, because nobody else can. He is the emperor. It is his job. He is the emperor. He is the judgment. He is the final arbiter. He is judge, jury, and executioner for every living person in the entire empire, if he wishes. Right? Courageous. What sort of emperor would he be if he hid behind the walls of Rome while the empire crumbled around him? What sort of emperor would he be? How could he possibly feel satisfied if he knew he was a coward and afraid and unwilling to enter battle? And free. He wants to be free. It is, again, he is the emperor, and then there are burdens upon him. It is his responsibility. There are people asking him for things all the time. He is supposed to protect and assist and guard and grow. I say, he's the wealthiest man in the world, in the Western Hemisphere. He is judge, jury, and executioner. He can do whatever he wants. And at the same time, there is a price for this action. There's a price for this power, that he is judge, jury, and executioner. And if he screws up and kills an innocent, that's on him. There's no law to hold him back. So for Marcus, his happiness seems to me not a gladness, not an ecstatic feeling, but instead a sort of solid way of life, a way that is unbothered by failure and chance. And I mean, could you imagine the people lying to him, the people trying to get something from him all the time? And he repeatedly says in this book over and over again, I am not responsible for what other people try to do. I cannot control other people's actions. I cannot control other people's point of view. And so it's really, it's interesting here because there's this almost a paradox, right? He is selfless, and then he is sacrificing all his time. He is responsible. He is upright. He is trying to do his job and make the empire better. At the same time, he has this intense personal way of morality and being. I do not control other people. I cannot direct them. I am not responsible for their actions. I am only responsible for mine and what I choose to do. But so it's very much me. What do I do? How do I act? How do I be free? How do I be courageous? How do I be just and responsible? How do I find some modicum of happiness in this terrible world, which is full of trials and tribulations, of death and doom and sickness and battles and lies? By basing your actions and desires on sound principles. He basically says, you're going to die, everything's going to be forgotten. All you do is eventually gone. Your name is dust. Your bones are nothingness. The stories told about you will be whispered of in legends and maligned. So why do anything? Because he's decided to stay alive. And what are you going to do with that if you decided to stay alive? How are you going to act? Well, you better act in such a way as to at least hold some modicum of happiness within yourself. You better act in such a way as to base your own sound principles of action and viewpoint on the world upon a solid foundation so that you cannot be tripped off. It cannot be suffering because you're already suffering in life. It's all pain and strife. But instead of choosing, the knife for yourself, he says, go out and fight. What do you have to lose? Oh. In number 4 here, he says, you may explode in rage, but men will still go on doing what they have always done. And oh my gosh, we all know this. You're sitting there and someone is doing, someone is being stupid. Right? Someone is lying to you. Someone is making a bad decision, and they do it over and over and over and over and over again. And you try to explain to them why they're wrong, and they ignore you completely. Or you try to teach them that the drugs or the alcohol or drinking are going to hurt them eventually and cause all these problems, and they just keep going back. You say, look, you might talk to someone who smokes, for example, and they're smoking, they're saying, yeah, the lung cancer is going to get me at some point, but, I'm choosing to smoke anyway. I'm going to die, so I may as well, go out doing what I like, which is a drug or something. You can talk to people who straight up lie to your face. Oh, I promise I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. And they're not. You're just so mad. You're like, why are you choosing this? Why are you doing this? You're an addicted gambler. Why do you? And you've told me that. It's not like you don't understand that you're an addicted gambler. You know exactly what you were doing as you were doing it, and you know it's bad. And you're just hating yourself. You tell me that, and then you go and do it anyway. Just like, oh my gosh. And shoot, look at ourselves sometimes, right? The number of times we wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to do this and this and this. I got a whole list written out of all I'm going to achieve. And you do 2 out of 10. You start working on something, and 3 hours later you go, okay, I think I'm almost done with this. And you end up taking a nap in the middle of the day, or you get into a book and all of a sudden it's 400 pages later and it's dark out. Right? You're just so annoyed. But for Marcus, look, that's what people are. And you could be mad. Yes, you can. You have good, solid reasons to be mad, that you are totally justified in being mad. But what does it do for you? What does exploding in rage actually do? When you're talking to someone, raging at them and mad, that when you're in your room ranting to yourself, like I do all the time, what is the point of that? So what I'm trying to do here sometimes is I end up ranting, right? I read these books on politics or economics or whatnot, or philosophy, and I'll go on and I'll rant, and my voice raises up and up and up, and then I go, okay, now let me review what I said. Let me try and take this rage and use something. Make something out of that. Let me review what I said. Let me hope for a response. And the way I'm reading this is, yeah, exploding in rage is not useful. But one area I tend to disagree with the Stoic outlook, with Aurelius's outlook here, is that he seems to say over and over again that emotions are not to be trusted, emotions are bad, emotions cloud the mind, as it is. And I say, yes, they do. They're bad, they're not to be trusted, they cloud the mind. But sometimes they also show something of us inside. If I become angry and I raise my voice and I start ranting for 5 or 10, 15 minutes about something, then maybe that's a sign that I care about what's going on. Maybe that is a sign that there's some intellectual struggle here. Maybe that is a sign that many interests of mine intersect at that one point. You know, I could continue regretting something and wallow in my regrets and terrible it is, and I should have done this, or I should have done that. Or I can use that regret, I can use that feeling to do something. I can't go back in time, but I can go forward. I can make rhymes. And what this also means for but men will still go on doing what they've always done is understand you cannot fix the world. You cannot change human nature. You do not have that power. The best you can do is to educate and show reason to a few folk and hope they sort of kind of get it. The best you can do is work in yourself and try to become a better person tomorrow than you were today. When you pick up a book and you read in some historical setting about a political problem or a war or some personal tragedy or a new philosophy of life, then recognize that we are not so different from the men and women of 3,000 or 2,000 or 1,000 or 100 or 10 years ago. We share the same brains, share the same emotions. And so, you know, you can read these old books and go, oh, you know, if I read a bunch of historical books and storybooks about old times and old ways, then you might ask, well, what does that have to do with today? Well, I would say the time is not so far apart. That you can still understand tragedy in Romeo and Juliet, that you can still read of Plato's Apology and see why people are incensed with him or people are on his side, that you can listen to the legends and stories and wailings and joys. You can read inscriptions on stone steles buried in the desert and go, oh, that is someone, you know, so the great king so-and-so the third was here, you know, Darius, Nebuchadnezzar, Ramses, whatnot, and did this and defeated the enemy here and unified all the nations and whatnot. And you go, oh, that is a government statement. That is a statement by a person. You know, if there is a picture of the great king, you know, that is painted in his tomb, or a picture or like a Buddha statue inscribed in a giant rock face. Oh, why do we do that? Why did they do that? Why did they make a statue? Why did they make a painting? And then we look at ourselves and we go, I can walk home from the grocery store and go, oh, there's a mural here. There's a picture of someone there. Why are they doing that? For the same reasons they did it 2,000, 3,000 years ago. We are not so different. Okay, so in 7, he starts to talk about how he thinks we should live and act. Every nature finds fulfillment in pursuing the right path, right? We aren't just randomly moving and existing. We are human beings, and we have direction, we have purpose, we have things and events and goals in mind. Who am I? What do I want to achieve? Where do I want to be? What sort of world do I want to see? Do I want to have joy or sorrow? Do I want to meet with my friends? Do I want to play games? Do I want to get a degree, get a job, get a family? Do I want to retire? Do I want to sleep? What do I want? He says, for nature like yours endowed with reason, so human beings, you can understand and reason and logic. This means refusing to approve ideas that are false or foggy, directing your energies only to the common good, limiting your likes and dislikes to those things that lie within your grasp, rejoicing in everything the universal nature has assigned you. Right? So, if I'm a human being, what is my nature? What is my fulfillment? How do I become happy? Or at least fulfilled, content with what I am and what I have done? No, don't approve ideas that are false or foggy. At least have a clear idea of what we are and what we want and what we are actively attempting to do, or what we are actively attempting to deal with. If you go into a situation and go, well, I don't really know what's going on here, but I'm going to try my best. What are the odds you end up doing the wrong action? What are the odds you end up helping the wrong person? What are the odds that if you just stepped back before acting and thought for 30 seconds that you would have made a different choice? Directing your energies only to the common good. And I think it's interesting here. The common good. When we say that, we're like, oh, to help other people, to self-sacrifice, to act for the good of the community. But I think there's another way of understanding this. Because the common good can also mean me, right? I am a reasonable person. I am a person in society. And so for the common good, it means do that which is good for all of the people. Do that which is good for the society, for the group. But recognize also that I am a member of that group. If I self-sacrifice and suffer to make someone else happier or smarter, give them better, let them cheat off me for better grades, well, what I'm doing is actually harming the system. I'm reducing the value of a degree. I am saying I am willing to suffer for you. But that's not the same necessarily as I am willing to act so as to help you. Sometimes self-love is what is required. Sometimes you need what is good for the community, right? Is standing up to the bully and saying, no, I will not let you do this. I will not let you hurt me. I will not let you stop me. Because I am doing what is good. It doesn't mean self-sacrifice. It means aiming at improving the world. Yeah. He says, limiting your likes and dislikes to those things that lie within your grasp. Do what you can. Recognize your limits. Don't hate what you can't control. Right? This is just good common sense to him. And rejoicing in everything the universal nature has assigned you. Do you have hands? Do you have feet? Do you have a tongue? Do you have a mind? Do you have ears and a heart? Do you listen to poetry? Do you work hard? Do you care? Do you feel? Do you live? Have you logic? Have you understanding? Can you create art or poetry or words? Do you assist in your society? Do you have a place in the world? Do you help folk? Do you protect your family or your country? You have these abilities. We could have been born a worm digging in the dirt. We could have been born without arms, right? We could have been born blind and deaf. We could have been born with some heart defects so that we died 30 days after birth, right? Take what you have and say, at least I have this. I may be missing an arm. I may have been born with one eye. I may have gone blind. I may have a brain injury. I may be missing my legs. I may be deaf on one side. But what I have, I have. What I am, and I should take joy in these things, not sit here whining and crying about what I don't have. Because whining and crying about what I don't have, about the powers that have not been granted to me, the fact that I'm not good at math, or that I'm not a great scientist, or that I wasn't born rich, doesn't help me. Right? I can't control those things. I can't fix those things. So let me do what I can. I think there is merit to this idea, and also some unmerit, in that it is a great way to help you live. Great way to accept what I can't do, and then also accept what I can. Don't let myself be limited by my failures, but don't let myself be controlled by them either. You know? Although I think it's also important to recognize that the limits we think we have are not always limits we actually have. I'm deaf on one side. Hey, maybe I can become a scientist and fix that. You know, maybe there's some surgery I can have done. Am I blind? Well, what can I do about that? You know, can I use it for a good effect, right? Can I, like, say I want to talk about racism, right? And I want to critique racism in some way, right? Then is it easier for me to do it from if I'm a certain race and I've suffered from it from way, but then I can speak up because of that? You know, how do I take my disadvantages and turn them into advantages? It's not just, oh my gosh, I was born without an arm and I gotta accept that. No. I was born with an arm, and what do I gain from that? You know, there's limitations that actually are, and there's limitations that we only think are there. And how do we challenge these limitations? I think is a question to ask. Because there's a weakness of Stoicism. It seems to me that it is fatalism. It is too easy to look at the world and say, well, I don't control that. I can't do anything about that. Right? You can tell yourself, I don't control other people. I can't make them act. You know, yeah, you can't make them act, but you can try to educate them. You can try to show them right from wrong, good to bad. You can try to illustrate the effects of their actions and what that actually means. Okay, so 8, I think, is pretty interesting. You know, my student days are over. Nevertheless, you can still learn to check your arrogance, learn to rise above pleasure and pain, learn to ignore flattery, and learn not only to keep from being upset with the gauche and ungrateful, but to give them a helping hand. So, particularly, my student days are over. You know, I have gotten the degree. I got the PhD. I have learned through job experience. You know, I have traveled the world and seen all these things. That doesn't mean I finished learning. And I can still improve. You know, there are, with every power, there's a fault that comes from that, right? Do I have all these studies that I've done in philosophy? I can still be totally ignorant of a philosophical thought. I can still be blind to a certain logic. I can still misunderstand a book I read, which I do all the time. You know? So be humble and learn that you always have something to improve. There was a guy I knew once, gosh, I don't know, 11, 12 years ago, 13 years. I think I asked him, like, what do you think is the most dangerous thing for a person of power? Because he had met the Prime Minister of England or something at one point, and he was talking about it. And I was like, okay, like how do they deal with, how does someone who is in charge deal with the sycophants, deal with the idea that they are in top of the world, you know, they're the president of the United States or something, and they can't do any wrong, or like they understand more than the common folk. They're geniuses. You know, and there's always someone willing to tell you you're a genius, always someone willing to praise you if you're a powerful person like that. And he said something to me. He said, that it was important to remember your faults, remember your failures. Remember, I have screwed up, I have done wrong, I have made mistakes, and I can still make those mistakes today. You know, it's not being humble so much as it is being clear-eyed. And this, number 8, is self-focus, about how can I improve? How can I improve? How can I not be arrogant? But it's also important, I think, to look at other people in the same way. You may talk to a great and wise professor. You may be talking to a business leader. They can still make mistakes. They can still be wrong. They can still cause harm. They can still have outmoded ideas. I was reading a book on a female archaeologist talking about her life, and all these guys who have been great professors who would be like, oh, well, I mean, you're a girl, so you're just cook and clean. You know, we couldn't possibly give the job to a girl. We couldn't possibly, open up a slot in our program to a woman, right? And because they had these old ideas, and they just couldn't challenge those ideas themselves. And so she's like, well, I had to wait until I tried to improve my corner of the world, and sort of had to wait for the accolades until I'm in my 80s, and just the generations change. So when you talk to someone and you go, in your head, you're going, oh my gosh, they're so wise, they're so smart, they're so pretty, they're so learned, they have so much history, they're so famous. Ask yourself, what have they learned from that fact? What have they... You're talking to a president. What has that president learned from being president? You're talking to a famous actress or a famous director, a famous producer. What have they learned from being an actor, a director, a producer? You can talk to a teacher or a principal and go, okay, have they learned from their experiences here, or are they still the same person they were 15 or 20 years ago? Are they willing to challenge their own ideas? Do they have the memory of their failures? Are they humble, or do they have an arrogance to them that you can't pop with a spear? Because we have that sometimes. We talk with folk and we're talking, and they realize, oh, they just don't get it, right? They just can't quite understand. Like, you talk with someone in their 90s who goes on about some racial thing, like we can't trust blacks or whatnot, or well, we know those blacks are criminals, or well, all the whites are out to get us, or I never liked Asian people, or something like that. Or you talk to someone who goes, oh, that's a commie idea. Like, okay, just calling names isn't going to fix anything. And you ask, you go, okay, have they changed, or have they remained the same? Because as Marcus Aurelius points out here, everything is change. It's always changing. Nature is change. This is nature's job, to move things from one place to another, to transform them, to take what is here and carry it over there. We can't go back in time. We can only go forward. That is someone using the old ideas and claims without modernizing them? Is someone stuck in the past? Is someone refusing to deal with the future? And are we doing that ourselves? Are we sometimes confronted with new ideas and we say, oh my gosh, that couldn't possibly work, without even giving it an actual chance? There's no simple, easy life. There's no right answer that's correct for each and every situation. It's a matter of change. It's a matter of movement. And yet all is change. There's nothing unexpected to fear in number 6, right? Everything moves, everything changes, but the same sort of stories repeat. We have the civil rights action, right, in the 60s. Well, that'll repeat. It'll repeat. We'll find new injustices that that society as a whole was blind to, was not aware of, and it'll repeat. But so too will the scientific revolution. We'll improve ourselves and repeat and repeat. So too will the democratic revolutions and communist revolutions and capitalist bubbles. It'll repeat over and over and over again. So how do we react to change? We can say, oh my gosh, we have to stop that change. We can say, oh my gosh, the change is great, we must embrace it. But Stoicism is about balance, about seeing clearly. What can I change? What can I not change? What is going to happen to me that is caused by other people? What are other people going to do? And what can I do in my turn? It's about recognizing that, yeah, change is going to happen. Things and storylines are going to repeat, but they are never the same, quite the same. It's not an exact repeat. It's different every time, and it's different people, it's different worlds, it's different technology, it's a different me. Hey, 14. Whenever you meet someone, ask yourself straight away, what are the things this person deems good and evil? Then I won't think it surprising or weird if he behaves in a certain way. Indeed, I'll regard it as inevitable. Right? So this is what he's trying to get at with the idea that we can't change people. But what we can do is we can see them more clearly. We can identify their faults and their benefits, their sins and their virtues. We can identify how they see the world, their system and their vision. If we do that, then all of a sudden the stranger becomes us like a rock falling from the sky. The scary movement or civilization or idea is just another line in a book. Just another chemical reaction. And so there's no need for us to get angry at it. There's no need for us to be shocked or upset. It was all there from the beginning. It was clear who they are and what they are and how they believe and what they want. How often do we meet someone and they tell us exactly who they are, what they desire, why they act in a certain way? It's often not straight out. It's often obtuse and indirect, but how often do we stand there, we're surprised, I didn't know it. He seemed like such a nice person. And we're thinking in the back of our head, well, I mean, sometimes he was a little quiet, or sometimes she was a little weird, or, well, I mean, there was that one bit where she was angry. I didn't really understand why. Well, she was always fiddling with something, Maybe you have a teenager who gets herself in trouble, and you're going, well, I mean, she did spend a lot of time on her phone, so I mean, okay. Maybe you have a sibling who stays in their room a little too often. You're starting to think, okay, maybe there's something a little off here. Maybe I should investigate. And we stop ourselves. We say, oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. If I was in that position, they'd probably just down or something. But, the story is there. How often does a customer walk into the store and you can immediately go, okay, this one's probably going to be a problem. This might be a problem because the way they look or act or dress or how their voice is the tone of their voice is when they speak to you within the first 3 sentences. You marked miss something. You had this first impression, and it's not always right, but oftentimes what we find is our first impression is pretty right. Then our second impression is ourselves going, okay, I don't want to be prejudiced against them. I don't want to automatically assume they're going to be rude or mean or a thief or something. But, I mean, there's this reason stereotypes hold, because sometimes they're true. And if you, I guess what the idea here is, right, if you can see someone clearly, if you can understand them clearly, then you're not upset by them. You're not angry and raging and sad. That is who they are and how they act. Right? If a drug addict steals from you, why are you surprised? If your boss exploits you and steals your idea, then fires you immediately after, why are you surprised? If a company disputes an insurance claim with you, why are you surprised? If a country attacks you, why are you surprised? Depending on who they are, it was obvious the entire time. In hindsight, it's obvious, we say. But don't wait until hindsight, and don't be mad when they reveal themselves for who they truly are. They never lied, really. It was more often than not us lying to ourselves about what we saw or felt. We can do it to us too, right? Well, I'm a good person. I'm a nice guy. Depending on the position, depending on the action, depending on if you get the results you want. I'm smart, I'm driven, I'm dedicated until you aren't. I'm calm all the time until you aren't. Right? And so in the same way we look at the world and try to understand it, we should look at ourselves and try to understand ourselves. Who are we? Why are we mad here? Why are we sad? Why do we act in the way we do? It's based upon some belief. There is a reason for every action we take. There's a reason for every emotion we have. There's a reason for every belief. It's not natural in the sense that it's accidental. It is natural in the sense that there is a pattern and a structure to every single second of our lives. And if we understand that, then we can use that knowledge to thrive. "16. Remember that you don't lose any freedom by changing your mind and accepting the correction of someone who points out your error. Often in life, we receive advice, and we know this advice is correct, but we just don't want to follow it. It's like, okay, just give me a second to think. Let me pace around for 10 minutes. I remember once, in talk with a lawyer or something, and she recommended I take a certain action, and I go, okay, like, I know you're correct. I know you are right, but just let me talk about this with someone for 10 minutes. Let me just give me a few minutes. Just work through my feelings about having to take this decision that I don't really want to take, because I know it's the good one, but I gotta work myself up to it. Or a brother or an uncle, whatever, it tells you, well, you should do this, you should try this, and you're going, I know I should, but I don't really want to. And often we feel that receiving advice impinges upon our freedom, and receiving advice is like, oh, they told me to do this thing and then I did it. So it's not me acting, it's them acting. But this point here at 16, you don't lose any freedom by acting in this way and accepting the correction of some other mind, is a very existentialist idea, right? I am in charge. I am the one who decides. One of the issues we can have with religion, for example, is, oh, you do it because a book tells you? That if a book told you to jump off a cliff, would you do it? This book or this story in a religious text tells you to take this action. It tells you that you should look in the world in this way. But why on earth would you follow a book? Like, it's just a book written by a person. It doesn't mean anything. It's somebody wrote that down at some point. Even if you truly believe it's the word of God, why should you do what God tells you to do? Right? Are you going to be punished because of it? You're going to be thrown in hell because you didn't, do the thing? Why do you believe that? Was it told to you in a dream? Did you have a burning bush? Did you have a 1,000-eyed angel? Did you have a voice from the sky? Did you have a special message? Did you see the light when you died? Or did you just feel something? when you read the book? Did you understand the world better when a priest told you the words, right? That is it something you believe because you were told to believe that, or is it something you believe because you saw and connected with it? And if you saw, it's like, how do you know what good is, right? You can read the 10 Commandments in the Bible and go, well, those are the rules, that's what you follow, done. Well, how do you know those? How do you know those are the right rules? How do you know those are the good rules? How do you know that those tell you to be good? You have to recognize it within yourself, right? Like if Moses comes down with the 10 Commandments written on 2 tablets, right? So what? Just because they're written on 2 tablets, they're somehow more correct? If some that is logically speaking, like rightly speaking, if some random beggar on the street told you the same 10 rules, then they should make just as much sense to you. You should recognize them as good and valid and strong and whatnot. Not because of some book, not because someone told you, not because it's inscribed somewhere, but because you yourself recognized with your own inner eye the truth or the validity or the good lesson from these words and ideas. Right? If someone has to tell you what good is, then you're just giving up your freedom to choose to be good. You're giving up your free will by just letting someone else tell you what to do. That is entirely different from saying, I am free myself and I freely choose to make this decision, to believe in this religion, right? Or to believe in atheism or whatnot. To work towards a political goal. Again, not because someone told you to, but because I decided. And it is in that hope of validity, that hope of sight, that I think the possible reason for religion lies, right? If a religion is just some book somebody wrote, and they had a council to decide which chapters were in this book and which chapters weren't. What was an acceptable interpretation of the metaphysical relationship between between Father, the Holy Spirit, and Jesus or whatnot. If they have a whole book about stories written regarding this prophet or that Buddha or whatnot, and then you have others piling in afterwards, judges who are going, well, this seems right, that seems right, and so what? It's you who decides. It's you who sees, and it's another way of like challenging it, right? If I can challenge you on an idea, and all you can say is I read it in a book, if all you can say is someone told me to, if all you can say is well, this person I admire follows that law, and if all you can say is, well, Einstein did the equations, or all you can say is Rutherford did the experiments. Or Galileo saw it in a telescope. That isn't enough to convince me of anything. That is enough to convince me of you. All I hear is, I give up. I'm not a person. I'm a thing. I'm some mouthpiece for some other being. But if you stand there and you can honestly, earnestly say, hey, I freely choose to believe in this because I think I see something. I think it helps me in some way. I think it is the truth. I freely choose to hold up this scientific theory because I've seen the proof, because I've done the studies myself, because I've attempted a few of the experiments, because I can see evolution in action and whatnot. The idea is so much stronger, and we have a tendency to, I think, when we're independent, to go, oh my gosh, I can't, someone else told me to do this thing, so I'm going to not do it. Someone told me to believe this, and so I'm not going to believe it. Like, so which of those is correct? My parents told me not to do this, so I'm going to do it anyway. My teacher told me not to do this, so I'm going to do it anyway. You know, the police don't want me doing this, so I'm going to do it anyway. The white man, the black man, the yellow man, the society, the green girl, the blue lizard, the winged angels, the Greek gods, they told me not to do this, so I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to do it to spite them. That's just the same action in an opposite manner, right? You're acting, you're believing, you're claiming something because of someone else. Or you're choosing the opposite because of someone else. How do you deal with that? You say, I am me, I am free, I have the ability to choose. And if I believe something, it's not because it's in a book. If I believe or disbelieve or act in a certain way or against a certain societal view, it is because I myself understand this. So the correction of another person should immediately tell me. I should be able to recognize from them if it's a good idea or a bad idea. It's not about who tells me. It's not about if the person is wise or good or learned or a child or adult or related to me or a priest or a scientist. At the same time, just because I'm told ideas that I don't like by someone I don't like, that doesn't mean they're totally wrong. I mean, there are ideas which it's difficult to do, right? Someone you really hate, someone you despise, someone you want to see dead, tells you something or imparts a piece of wisdom and you go, gosh, darn it, he's right. And you don't want to accept that he's right. You don't accept that this horrible person has given you an idea. You don't want to accept that this dumb book has some point. But it's not about the dumb book. It's not about the person you despise. It's about the idea itself. It's about your own vision being clear, being clarified. It's about your own willingness to see the entire world as a message. Not about good and bad or good and evil. It's about true or untrue. Okay, then try to be a little shorter here. Right? So 19, I think this is a bit, what will you say? I'm here to have a good time. The very thought is beneath contempt. And the way I think of it is, look, if the point of life is pleasure, the point of life is happiness, then go find a drug, give yourself an overdose, and pass away. Right? Go out on a high note. Go out as happy as you could physically become. You're only going to hold that happiness for a couple of seconds, but hey, what else you got to look forward to, right? If it's all about being happy, then what sort of happiness are you after? Are you after a momentary, immediate pleasure? Great. Well, that's a light bulb. Light bulb flashes, light bulb blows up, and this giant burst of light goes everywhere, and it goes dark forever, right? And if you don't have a purpose, if your purpose is just to have a good time, then go have the bestest time you possibly can and then get out of here. You're done, right? You achieved your goal. Someone like, I want to say Aristotle might say, hey, what if your goal is to have a good time? But to have a good time which is extended through time, right? Like, I don't want to put myself full of a drug and go out in a light bulb. No, I want to drink caffeine. I want to have. I like to get up in the morning and have my coffee or my tea or my fruit juice, and sit there looking at the sunset, listening to the sunrise, listening to the birds. And I want to do that every single day. And I want to have happiness, but extended. I don't want to have these highs of, oh my gosh, I'm on some chemical concoction and these lows of, oh no, I'm so addicted and I need my thing. And then a high again and then a low, right? No, what I would like is just general upper level of pleasure. Most times, like, I'm warm, I'm safe, I'm comfortable, I have a good family, I have a good life. Well, and that's a different type of I'm here to have a good time, but it's a more complex one, I think. And this is where Marcus's Stoic views come in. He's like, if you want to have happiness, stop worrying about what other people say or think or do, right? If you want to have happiness, then seek for happiness within yourself, because you can control that. If you want to have happiness, be stoic. So when he says, the very thought is beneath contempt, he's talking about these hedonistic viewpoints. Because that was another philosophy at the time, sort of the hedonism. The idea that you should enjoy as much as possible. This is when the era when people might do things like go to a party, eat as much as they possibly can, then go to the bathroom and throw up all their food, then come back and eat some more. And repeat this 2 or 3 times. Because eating is pleasurable. Eating is fun. But sitting there with the stomachache to eat too much, that sucks. What do? Well, you better eat, and then get rid of that food. Then eat, then get rid of that food. And hey, that's how you have a great time. You just keep getting in that pleasure. And, of course, this ends up backfiring rather rapidly. So when he says the very thought is beneath contempt, he's like facing one of his own demons, right? He's the emperor. He could wander into the palace at Rome and drink his life away. He could spend the next 20 years drunk out of his mind, getting laid all the time. And he's deciding not to. He was saying that will not make me happy. That will not lead me to have a fulfilling life. Instead, what I ought to do is do my duty. What I have to do is achieve happiness and contentment and extend my own reason. What I ought to do is be just and kind and thoughtful. What I ought to do is spend my life traveling from crisis to crisis on the battlefield, here and there, and sicknesses and troubles and problems and dynastic issues and the law, and always fighting with people about making them do the right thing or the good thing or the strong thing or the best thing for the community and not for themselves. And why? Because that fulfills a purpose, that fulfills a reason. Why am I here? It's a Marcus Aurelius, and it's really about that. Why am I here? Ask yourself every day as an individual, right? Why am I here? What am I doing? What is the purpose or the reason for my existence? Is it just to have fun? Is it to build something? Is it to retire and spend the next 40 years playing video games? I mean, and it is, I think, at its core, non-judgmental. Do whatever makes you happy. Do what you want to do. Marcus is just saying that, hey, this works for me. Because again, this book, right, it wasn't meant for dissemination. It wasn't trying to teach anybody anything. It wasn't trying to change anybody's mind. He was just talking to himself, like I do all the time. Okay, 22. Attend to the matter at hand. You get what you deserve because you would rather become good tomorrow than do good today. That's just general life advice, right? Don't put off till tomorrow what you can do today. How often do we tell ourselves, I'll be better next time, I'll be better next time? No, be better now. Be stronger now, because tomorrow might not come. That next chance might not be here. You might have this regret and hold it forever. So act today. Do today. And this is something that is obvious to everybody, but hard to put into action, I think. It's one of the hardest things to make yourself do, because we recognize we aren't perfect. And really gets you right to do good today. Don't let perfect come in the way of being good. It's not about being perfect. We're not going to be perfect, right? We aren't God. We aren't all powerful. We can be the most powerful person in the world, and we still can't fix everything. We still can't stop everything. We still cannot direct the actions of other people. What we can do is direct ourselves. We can say, I will not regret again. Say, I will speak when the opportunity presents itself. So 24. Right? Think of your bath. Oil, sweat, grime, filthy water, all utterly disgusting. Such is every part of life and every material thing you treasure. This is really just what is important. It's not the gold. It's not the jewels. It's not the fancy clothing. It's not the wonderful instruments. It's not the chariots. It's not the fancy armor. It's not the great house. No, it is, for him here, things that aren't disgusting, right? The people you know, the loves you have, the events you've engaged in, the adventures, the assistance, the good that you have done. These are immaterial things. They are not the same as what we experience every day, right? I mean, especially imagine you are a soldier on campaign, and one time you undertake a heroic action, you're rewarded with a gold ring. Then one day you're in a battle and you lose that gold ring. Do you cry and whine? Oh my gosh, it's gone, it's so terrible. Or do you say, the gold ring was not important. It was the heroism that was important. And so 30, I think this is interesting. Whether speaking to the Senate or to the humblest person, use language that is respectful but not affected. Let your speech be plain and honest. So again, Marcus Aurelius is an emperor. He doesn't have to be humble or respectful to anyone. But he says he is here. Let your speech be plain and honest. And this comes with the idea that all of nature contains the same reason. Every person is your brother or your sister, your father, your mother. We are all one family, one community, one people, one human being, one reason. From the deepest depths to the highest heights, from the farthest west to the nearest east, from the child to the elder. There is something to learn. There is an equal spirit between us. There's an equal reason, an ability to learn, right? From the mouths of babes may come lessons which gods could not have made. I mean, so this arrives at the American ideal, perhaps, the hope that, right, you're sitting there and George Washington is coming round the fires at Valley Forge, the great commander himself. I'm now to see you, and he's just a regular guy. He's willing to talk to you. He's not there up on his high horse. He's not out of the grime. He's not refusing to talk to you or look at you. He's not the Sun King of France. No, he's just a person, a good person, a strong person, a valued person. Someone you look up to for many reasons, that holds the army together, but not a god in far Olympus. And why is he doing that? Because, hey, you might have the idea. You might be a friend forever. You might be a person. Right? Sometimes when we are rich or successful or born a certain way or look a certain way, then we talk to others and we go, well, that person can't possibly be worth talking to because they're of a different color or a different sex or a different religion, or a different age. And no. They, too, are a page in the book of life. They, too, may have messages we will hear nowhere else. And this, I think, leads into 34, right? And he says, have you ever seen a hand or a foot cut off? This is exactly what a man does to himself as far as he is able. You are torn from the unity of nature into which you were born apart and from which you have now cut yourself off. But here is an astounding thought. You are still capable of rejoining that unity. Right? What makes a human being? What makes you a person in a society? We may have done terrible things. We may have spent years living in the woods or depressed. We may have failed at an attempt. We may be ugly. But that does not mean that we aren't human. That doesn't mean we aren't American or Chinese or Swiss, right? That doesn't mean that we can't be a nerd or a jock or a gyaru, right? That doesn't mean that we can't have a conversation with someone. Hey, we may have done terrible things. We may have made mistakes. We may not be what we once were. We may have lost an arm. We may have suffered through PTSD. But humans are reasonable things. We can control our emotions to a degree. We can see clearly. We can speak and understand and communicate and connect. So what? I sit in my room and I'm depressed. So what? I don't talk to my friends. So what? I don't have any money or a job. So what? I have no idea what to do with my life. I can at least try. Right? And this is important, right? To no other part of his creation is God granted the power to rejoin the whole once it has been cut off or severed. It's not about forgiveness or anything. It's about the fact that we can grow as people. Even if our tail has been cut off, right? We can grow again, just like that lizard. We may have lost our family, but hey, like a cat or a dog, we can find new ones. We may have lost our job, but we can help the world in other ways. We may not be what we were, but that doesn't mean we are nothing. We are still something. We have changed. We are different. Of course we are. But so is the world. And there is a wide variety of options and opinions and people. How many of us hope for just one good friend, one best friend, one person who understands us? And if you can achieve that, then you can handle anything. If you haven't achieved that, that does not mean it's impossible. But you can make it impossible for yourself by giving up. You can make it impossible for yourself by being silent. You can make it impossible for yourself by reminding yourself over and over again that I'm ugly or I'm dumb or I'm useless or I'm too old or I'm too young or I'm too odd. Or I'm just a salaryman or whatnot. But really, truly, if we are an individual, if we are a person, is everyone against us? Is there no human being on the entire planet who will ever connect with us? Is there not a possibility for a love or a friend or a family to be found? The idea is absurd. There are billions. And even if I have to retreat into a book to read it, even if I have to wait, even if I have to travel, if a man cuts himself off from the whole, he has provided the means for him to rejoin the whole and play his part again. If I am reduced from society, I can enter into society again. I can be kind. I can be nice. I can attempt to help people. I can get a job somewhere. I can volunteer at a homeless shelter or a museum, or planting trees. I can learn how to play a game like chess or poker. and go join a tournament somewhere. I can start streaming myself playing games online and perhaps eventually connect with a few people of the same mind. You never know. So I think the question here is, can you to yourself be kind? Can you say, I'm ugly, but that doesn't matter? You know, I'm a failure, that doesn't matter. Why? Because I can change. Why? Because the real me is in my actions, in my brain, in my reason, in the auditory and emotional exchange. It's not in my ideas. It's not in my attempts. It's not in how I look or feel or breathe. It's in that I look and feel and breathe. Now, 35. So too can a rational being convert every hindrance into material for himself and use it for its own ends. Nothing is useless. There is a reason that matches the world. There is all the time things that happen to us which seem bad and horrible, and nothing good can possibly be gained from them. You know, we're abused by a parent. We're beaten up on the street. We are attacked by our boss. We are laughed at by strangers. What can we learn from that? What can we take from that? We have these great, horrible regrets. Can we use them and burn them and fire ourselves up to action? Right? Are we hurt? Are we in pain? Is there a lesson to gain from that? Is something good happen to us? Are we playing a game? Well, maybe we can find a message or a goodness or an idea in there and build up upon it. You know, pick up a pen, pick up a pencil, and just start drawing random shapes. And you color it in, and pretty soon you have a piece of art. And you didn't expect it, you didn't know it, but you can show it. So next time something bad happens to you, don't ask, oh my gosh, how could that have happened? Don't worry and sit there, oh my God, why me? Why me? Instead, look at it and say, what can I use this for? What can I make of this? Right? Say you're submitting a college essay, right? Hey, this is some tragedy in my life, but I can use it as a great college essay. Right? How many times have we been in a situation and it's gone bad, and we get out of it, we're going, okay, well, at least this is a good story. You know, I remember that time I was, you know, the guy, you know, tried to hit you with his skateboard. Right? Remember that time you got lost in the backwoods and some guy came out with a shotgun to like ask you what on earth you were doing here? Thought you were going to die, but then you made it out. Remember that time that you ended up sleeping on the streets of Seoul because the Airbnb wouldn't let you in, and it was cold and dark, and you're sitting there on the concrete. And you can, I mean, that happened to me once, and I can sit there and go, oh my gosh, this is terrible, this is horrible. Or you can say, hey, at least it's a good story. There was a time I was late to a plane in Japan, and I go, hey, this sucks. I have to buy another ticket that I can't really afford. But it makes for a good story. I can tell it. I can say it. You know, I once fell off a bridge and sprained my ankle. And that sucked. That hurt. Couldn't really walk well for a few days, but it's a story I can use, right? It's a lesson I can have. The next time I fall off a bridge, I'll be better prepared. You know, even failing a test is a message to myself. In the same way, but perhaps we fail at something. Well, what is it failure telling us? Are we not working hard enough? Is this not our goal in life? Do we not really want this? Right? I mean, I have a flute and a violin here, but I don't really practice with them. I tell myself I should. I tell myself I'm going to, but I don't really, I really don't. And I can regard that as a failure, or I can say, okay, obviously, instead of spending my time pining about these instruments and learning them, I don't want to do that. I want to do something else. So what else do I want to do? Instead of hating myself, I can learn about myself. Okay. Well, 51, I think, has a wonderful visual. If a man were to stop beside a limpid spring of sweet water and start hurling insults at it, would it suddenly cease to flow? Even if he threw mud into the stream, it would soon dissolve and wash away and leave no taint or stain. How then can you possess an ever-flowing spring? Right. So think of yourself as a thing in nature. The wind blows and you can't stop it. The waves come and they cannot be halted. Fire burns and it destroys, but also renews. A tree seed lands in a crack and eventually splits the mountain open. All of nature has lessons for us, but this one of the spring of the beginning of a brook or a stream, I think, is something very interesting, because it is a flowing water that can be dirtied and stained. It is something that can be stopped and halted and covered up and destroyed for a time. But it comes back. The water from the spring climbs and pushes slowly past all that you do to it. The scars, the horrors, the mud, the freezing, the winter that freezes it, the summer that burns it. It comes back and it continues to flow and flow and flow and flow, slowly sweeping all the terrible things out of the way. Not by mighty power, not by breaking them, but by just being there. By being a force, an idea, a spirit that continues through the past, through the present, through the future. Instead of struggling, it's like, Bruce Lee, be water, my friend. It can pour in a teacup, it becomes a teacup. It can flow or it can crash, it can be gentle, it can splash. Pour into a cup, it becomes a cup. Pour over yourself and it cools you, then it drips over you, your flesh, and then it falls into the ground, and then eventually it rises up again as mist and rains and enters in spring or an aquifer, then comes up again, and then it's in your bucket, and you can pour it on yourself again. It goes back and renews, and it flows and flows and flows, and it's just clarity and clearness, not immediately, not with a dreadful, horrible power that scars you, but with the soothing hour. A gentleness, but also indomitable flowering. And how can you possess a spring? How can I be like a spring? Because I could choose to be like, or I could choose to admire, let's say, the sun, the moon, the stars, the mountain, the ocean, the field, the breeze, the volcano, the earthquake. These are things that are not quite the human spirit, I think. The sun shines forever but never dims. The mountain rises, but it is rock, it does not live. The fire sweeps and then renews, but then disappears. The earthquake is this great breaking, and then it's quiet again for a long, long time. The grassy field, the blowing wind, these are wonderful visions, but a spring, a river that flows. You can go up and down, you can swim, you can drown. You can float on your back and just listen to the sound. By my grandmother's house, there was a river flowing through, and sometimes you just listen to it. You could hear it. You'd go down to it, and you'd sit on the creek bank and just breathe, right? Because it wasn't a tree that was always growing. It wasn't a rock being thrown. It wasn't some great gravitational force. It wasn't a fire or a flame or some hard metal. No, you could dip your hand in the water. You could almost swim. And it was slow sometimes. It was fast others. It could flood or it could freeze. But it never entirely went away. It was different every day, and that also is like the human spirit, right? We aren't always here. We aren't always strong and proud and great and wise. We make mistakes all the time. Sometimes we're quiet or we lie. You know, the spring, the flow, the water that is us, not always great and worthy of trust, but it is eventually enough because it doesn't stop. And while we live, hope remains. If we feel pain, then we can learn something from that instead of having it be in vain. So this another visualization here in 57. What fails to reflect the light deprives itself of light. And he's talking about, so a sunbeam falls upon a thing, and if it absorbs all that sun, then it's black as pitch. There's nothing to see. You're not even sure it's there. It's like wandering around at night, and you don't know when you're stepping just how far away the earth is sometimes. You don't know if there's a stair here. You don't know if the land is flat, or if there's a little dip or a little rise in the rocks and the dirt and the grass outside. But there is light you can see. And in the same way, think of ourselves, right? If I'm looking at a mirror, if I'm looking at a mirror with my eyes, then if I'm in the dark, if there's no truth or justice or logic or reason to bounce back to me, if there's no message from the outer world, then all I have is what is inside my mind, and that might be dark almost all of the time. But if a light strikes me and then I reflect it and it reflects off something else and reflects to me, then instead of a beam, instead of a lightsaber that cuts and burns, instead of a laser that explodes and destroys, it is a glow. It is the light of a torch, not the torch itself. It is the warmth of a flame and not the burning, destructive name. But the visual here as it goes, it responds is, if someone tells you something, if you receive a message from outside, if you're looking into someone's eyes and you're feeling like there's something there you just don't understand. Then do you walk away? Do you remain silent the entire day? Do you say, that isn't for me, I can't see that, I don't understand that, that's wrong? Or do you go, there's a light there, there's a brightness, there's a spark, and I want to understand what's happening. I want to intake the wisdom or the emotion or the possibility, and then reflect my own wisdom and emotion and possibility. You know, who cares if the idea is from a book or a person, if it's a dog telling it to me, or a fox or a rabbit or a crow or an owl or a dragon or a fish or a unicorn or a person or a historical fact or a piece of clay. It's not the game we play exactly, it's that we do play a game. It's that we engage. And if we engage, we are willing to feel light and then be light ourselves. We are willing to exchange information, to speak, to dream, to scream if we have to, so that we are heard. So that the sounds we make reflect or change the flights of birds. Right? So there's movement and shifting and that visualness, right, of a stream that flows. It's not the mirror of Erised. It's not stillness and quiet. It is changed, it's life. There are times to be silent, to be yourself, to be focused in the dark, dreaming, finding your own inner spark. But if that's all you ever do, then what was the point of you? If you find your own inner spark, but there's nowhere for the light to go, then why did you even bother to know? It's about the story of the Stoicism here is intensely centered, but also accepting of the world around you. It is saying we are one with our reason. There is something deeper. There's something stronger. There's something more important than the obvious trials and tribulations and hatreds and loves and whatnot. There is truth. And it's not about a book or a priest or a philosopher. It's about if we as individuals can reach and touch and be touched in return by light and knowledge, by feeling and bravery. So we end here with 61. Enter into your neighbor's governing thoughts and let your neighbor enter into yours. Meditation is all well and good. Learning, reading books, listening to other people is all well and good. But if you only do one of those, then there's no exchange, there's no growth, there's no reason or point. So do both of them. I hope that's what I'm trying to do here, right? By explaining my thoughts and my visions and why certain ideas touch me and what I'm trying to understand, I'm saying, this is me, I am demanding to be seen. At the same time, I'm reading other people's books, I'm talking about other people's ideas, and I'm trying to understand their point of view, their beliefs, their movements and trials and tribulations and histories and hopes and dreams. You know, I'm talking about my interpretation of other people's ideas, my interpretation of my own ideas, and trying to exchange in an easy way where I can and how I can with books and ideas, not necessarily straight to people's faces because awkward and anxious about that. But what I can do is I can speak here, and I can listen to ideas. I can read comments, right? I know I can do that. It's how I try to become and reflect the flowing light. It's how I try to see myself and know myself as a being that can shine bright.